This is Michael Ruffino from Terrible at Fishing with your Gold Country Radio Fishing Report. It would be nice to introduce myself in our very first show. My name is Michael Ruffino. I'm retired. I have chosen Klamath Falls out of hundreds of towns to retire in, and I absolutely love it. The neighbors, the businesses, everything here reminds me of growing up in a small town. I am a host of a popular YouTube channel called Terrible at Fishing, thus the title of this show. I also am a best-selling author on a fishing book, believe it or not. It is called Terrible at Fishing Instruction Manual for Freshwater Fishing. So, my passion for fishing emanates from childhood. Here in Klamath County, I help host the fishing events at Lake of the Woods. I am deemed an expert at that particular lake, although I am a bass fisherman stuck in trout and salmon country. But that's the fun part. I get to learn trout and salmon since I've actually started here. And I am just enjoying myself here in Klamath Falls. Spring has sprung. Klamath Falls and the surrounding areas are just bustling with activity in the lakes. Trout fishing has just become abundant. Lake of the Woods, with a temperature of 57-degree water and lots of stock that has been coming in, has woken up. Trout fishing is very good at Lake of the Woods. Bass are starting to come up. Crappie are abundant. Yes, Lake of the Woods has an event coming up too. Know that this January 1st and 2nd is a free fishing weekend. And at Lake of the Woods, their free, no-cost family event for the children happens. The happiest day on the lake. Free fishing for the children at stocked ponds. Yes, bring the kids and the family and enjoy a day on the lake watching your kids catch a wonderful fish. We also have great fishing at Fish Lake, where the trout are hitting very successfully with an almost full reservoir. The trout have been stocked readily there too. Willow Lake too is warming up, and bass are starting to hit, as well as the crappie. And trout too are hitting very well there. Emigrant is 80% full. And remember, as that lake continues to fill, crappie is an incredibly good size in that reservoir. Howard's Prairie is at 56%, and Hyatt is at 62%. It's an amazing thing that's happening throughout the entire valley. Agate is at 100%. Diamond Lake, it reports very good rainbow trout. In fact, the average person is hitting their limit within 3 hours. They're running power bait and trolling with an 18-inch leader, 8 feet to 28 feet in depth. This is a great lake to catch some very large rainbow trout. Remember, at that lake, if you catch a brown trout or a tiger trout, you must put it back. It is illegal to keep those fish. Now let's get into some of my favorite fishing. This time of year, with the water warming up, our lakes are starting to warm up, and that allows for warm water fish to come to the surface. Our cold water fish, which are trout, are going to be heading deeper into the lakes. But as the lakes turn, it allows all of us to catch fish at any depth. Now, one of the most wonderful fish that I enjoy fishing for are bass. But during this time of year, crappie are hitting. Crappie is a small fish that actually is also known as a panfish. The reason it's called a panfish is because we like cooking them. They're one of the best tasting fish in the reservoirs and the lakes. And they're easy to catch. All you do is take a very small little jig, about 1/8 of an ounce or 1/16 of an ounce, and you toss it in the water by structure. What I mean by structure, I mean docks and overhangs. These fish love to be suspended about 5 to 6 feet down below the surface and in near shaded areas. If you just throw that little bait out there, that little itty bitty bait, you could put a little worm on there, you could put power bait on it, or just a plastic rubber jig on it, and let it drop down and just wait for those fish to bite. Crappie are also known as paper mouths. They got a very fragile mouth. So don't yank on the rod as hard as you can, because that will make a lipless wonder left in the lake, and all you've got is his lips on your hook. So just sort of pull up and reel in. Yep, crappie is one of the best tasting, easiest to clean, and fun fish to catch. And believe me, you will catch a lot of crappie. It's great for all ages, and there are full tournaments just set for crappie fishing. Now, I know I live in Klamath Falls in Klamath County. Everybody here likes to fish for trout. Yep, rainbow trout, brown trout, brook trout. We don't care. We just want to catch a trout. And the way the lakes are being stocked today is just amazing. There's tons of stock going into these lakes. Now, what that does, it allows for the lakes to wake up, and all the fish in there hear these stockings. Now, how do you catch a trout? There's lots of easy ways to catch a trout. You could use a little Mepps or rooster tail spinner. Let that sink down near the bottom of about 10 feet right now, and just reel it in nice and slow and gradually, and you'll probably catch a trout. Probably one of the most reliable methods I've seen trout fishermen do is using what's called a water bobber. It is a slide bobber that goes on your line, and you fill it with water. And you're thinking, Mike, why did I fill a bobber with water? Well, I'll tell you why. The bobber then has a fairly neutral buoyancy, and it will sink. It allows you to cast as far as you want, which is great for any kind of shore fisherman. If you're fishing from the bank, a water bobber is the way to go. You're going to put the water bobber on, fill it with water on your line. Then you're going to add a barrel swivel, and with 3 to 5 foot leader on it, which means line, with a little hook with power bait on it. You use any power bait you want. I prefer Tequila Sunrise, which is like a purple and blue. A lot of people are stuck on rainbow, but whatever you put on it, you can just put it, roll it up in a nice tight ball and put it on that hook and heave it out there. What the water bobber will do, it'll sink down to the weed line, and power bait floats, and it will float up above the weed line, and you will catch your trout. Yep, trout fishing is a fairly simple way of fishing, but very rewarding when a fish hits it and they break surface, which means that they dart up out of the water and the excitement happens. Start reeling in and don't let that line get slack, or else that particular fish will spit the hook out and you're back to square one. But go out to the lakes, the rivers, and just enjoy catching your first or next trout. And since I am a bass fisherman, this time of year can be very, very frustrating. Bass are warm water fish. And as the lakes start to warm, us bass fishermen, we get pretty excited. So, what's happening in our lakes right now when it comes to largemouth and smallmouth bass? Well, as the lakes get from 55 degrees on up, and we're starting to see that in all the lakes right now, the bass come up from the depths and they start what we call a pre-spawn. And they're hungry. Bass are going to come up and they're starving because they've been down in the depths of the lake for too long, an entire winter. Now they're coming up and they're going to feed heavily before they start to make their beds. Yeah, we call their nesting areas a bed. And they're going to be sitting on those beds during what we call the spawn season. So that's going to happen relatively soon. So this is a great time to go out there and catch some bass that are really hungry. Largemouth bass, they're going to go after a rather large bait. In fact, both of them are pretty hungry, smallmouth and largemouth. It's just a matter of can they fit it in their mouth. Now, the largemouth, this is a great time to use soft plastics. It's basically a big hook with a skirt on it. I know, it's a skirt with a large creature, soft plastic attached to it. And you're going to bounce that off of the rocks and pull it through the weeds and try to get those bass really shooting for it. The smallmouth bass, they got a littler mouth. They're going to go for something meaty for them, but not as big as the largemouth bass. So typically what I would do, I like hard baits. I would take a medium dive hard bait and I would bounce it off the rocks on a rocky bottom. The neat thing about both largemouth and smallmouth bass is that a smallmouth bass likes rocky bottoms. Rocky bottoms are great for laying their eggs, but it also is warmer. Rocks retain heat and emanate it within a short space above them, and the smallmouths like that. The largemouths, they don't like to be visible. They're shy, and they like to hide in the bushes and in the grass, in the reeds, underneath logs and things like that. A largemouth, you're going to have to get something that's weedless and pull it through the brush, bounce it off the logs, and hopefully don't lose your bait. But both of these fish are hungry right now, and they're getting ready to lay their eggs. And during that period of time, I'm not much of a bed fisherman. I usually let the fish hatch their eggs, but after that, watch out. This area has some of the best topwater fishing I have ever seen. Lily pads, warm water, you really can't go wrong. Now, what to expect from our upcoming shows. Now, in this show, I've pretty much encapsulated crappie fishing, pan fishing, whether it be for bluegills or for pumpkin seed sunfish, whether it be black or white crappie, doesn't really matter. That technique that I told you about works for every one of them. As for trout, I've given you two very good techniques to catch trout in our lakes. And as for bass, look for a lot more information on bass as they get into their spawn and post-spawn. But what are we going to talk about in the future? Well, we have lots of topics. For instance, how to pick a fishing rod. Have you ever gone to a store and seen hundreds and hundreds of rods? It's confusing. So we got to help you understand how to pick a fishing rod. You know, the type of fish, the type of areas that you're going to get into, you know, the type of techniques that you want to do, how to pick a fishing rod, how to pick a fishing reel. That's important. Is it a spinning reel? What size? 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, etc. What about a bait caster? Oh my goodness. How about a spin caster? There's so many options when it comes to gear. But I want to help you pick the right gear. So in our upcoming shows, we're going to talk about how to buy gear. When you walk into a store, you're going to be equipped with everything you need to pick the right setup for you. And then what to put on it. There's so many fishing lines. Go to the fishing line area. It's crazy. There's monofilament. There's braid. There's fluorocarbon. Which one to choose and why? That is incredibly important. And then, of course, there is the type of tackle that you're going to need. Our upcoming shows, we're endeavoring to give everybody in the area everything they need for a successful day fishing. And we think, with my experience and with a lot of help from local fishermen, we're going to be able to give you just that. Start every show with a fishing report, and then we get to talk about how to catch all those fish in the Klamath Basin. So thank you for tuning in to Terrible at Fishing, and we'll see you next time. and tight lines to each and every one of you.